Hey guys, tonight we dive into the absolutely miserable, awkward, and often misunderstood life of the medieval torturer, a person who had job security, a government salary, and absolutely no dinner party invitations. Imagine a life so necessary to the survival of law and order, yet so shunned by everyone around you. You probably won't survive this, but stick with me. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I always find it fascinating to see where everyone's coming from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. In medieval society, being a torturer was not a job you applied for like you would with any other trade. It was often forced upon you, either through inheritance, position, or desperate circumstance. You were neither a hero nor a villain, you were simply an instrument of the law. Society needed you, but it didn't want to look too closely at what you did. To be a torturer was to live a life in the shadows, constantly surrounded by suffering, yet expected to be completely detached from it. The work itself was grueling, but what made it even more unbearable was the complete isolation from society. As a torturer, your job was to break people physically and mentally, often in public, so that others would think twice before committing crimes. The tools you used, racks, spikes, the infamous Iron Maiden, were not just instruments of pain, but symbols of power. Yet, despite being essential for the medieval justice system, you were ostracized and looked down upon, seen as someone who didn't deserve any companionship or affection. You probably never wanted to be a torturer. In fact, no one really wanted that life. But once you were in it, there was no easy way out. The role had its rules, its structure, and its expectations, and just like any other medieval job, you did what you had to do, often with little question. The pay was enough to survive, but the emotional toll was something you could never escape. Historians still argue whether medieval torturers truly believed in the justice they administered, or whether they were merely cogs in a much larger machine. Whatever the reason, your life as a torturer was one of constant struggle, not just with the people you tortured, but with your own conscience. You couldn't escape it. It followed you like a shadow. You were not born into this grim job, though it probably felt like destiny once you found yourself in it. Growing up, you had no idea that the torturer's chamber would eventually become your domain. You were just like any other child, playing with wooden toys, chasing frogs by the river, and dreaming of something far less sinister. But somewhere along the line, something changed. In medieval towns, there was a clear division between the respectable professions, blacksmiths, carpenters, bakers, and the more feared and despised jobs. Your family might have been well off, or maybe they were poor, struggling just to get by. Either way, the odds of you becoming a torturer were small. But like many careers in medieval Europe, it often ran in the family. If your father was a torturer, or maybe just a jailer or an executioner, you had a high chance of following in his footsteps whether you liked it or not. The transition from an ordinary childhood to a life of cruelty wasn't sudden. In fact, it was probably the worst kind of slow burn, with no obvious path leading you from innocence to torture. Maybe you first saw it as a child's game, pretend executioner wielding an imaginary sword. Maybe you were drawn to the gruesome artifacts of punishment, the iron collars and chains that seemed like something out of a nightmare. But one day, the game became real. Your apprenticeship began in the most unglamorous of ways, by cleaning the very tools you would later learn to wield. Ironically, the first lesson a torturer learns is not how to inflict pain, but how to maintain the instruments of pain. The rack needed tightening, the chains needed repairing, and the instruments of execution needed oiling. It was mundane and mechanical, but you had no choice. You did what you were told, and slowly you learned the rope. The tools became your companions, your only friends in a world that had long turned its back on you. Your early lessons were not based on any kind of manual. There were no how-to guides on becoming a torturer, only the grizzled advice of a seasoned mentor or your father's cold, silent example. The job wasn't glamorous, it wasn't heroic. You didn't wear a uniform or carry a shiny sword. Your uniform was likely tattered, and your work was done in the darkest corners of the town, in windowless rooms lit by the flickering light of torches. This was not a place for warmth or compassion. It was a place for pain, coldness, and fear. There was a steady accumulation of knowledge over time, but it came not from textbooks or formal classes, but through years of watching, assisting, and eventually participating. Your first lesson wasn't about the philosophical why of torture. It was about the pragmatic how. The tools you were taught to use became more than just inanimate objects. They became extensions of your will. The Iron Maiden, that infamous device, was carefully maintained, polished, and tested. You were shown how to adjust the spikes, to ensure they would not cause immediate death, but would instead extend the suffering, causing slow and deliberate pain. The rack was just as methodical, a device that stretched the body to the point of agony, forcing confessions or at least the illusion of them. You learned the difference between a confession gained by force and one that came from the mind. But what kind of confession did you receive, really? Was it a truth, or simply an attempt to end the unimaginable torment? With time, you began to grasp the horrific subtleties of torture, the sounds of chains scraping against stone, the cries of agony that filled the air, the sharp scent of sweat and fear. These became the soundtrack to your daily existence. It wasn't just about inflicting pain, it was about control. The power you wielded, while immense, was also fragile. A tortured soul might give you the words you sought, but was it truly a confession or simply a desperate plea to end the suffering? Historians still argue whether the medieval torturer ever truly saw themselves as part of a necessary system of justice, or if they were merely pawns in a larger, often corrupt political game. The line between justice and cruelty was thin, if it existed at all. You were not expected to care. The law was the law, and if that law required someone suffering to preserve social order, you had no room to question it. But the apprenticeship itself was only part of the process. There was a psychological conditioning that came with it. Slowly, you stopped seeing your victims as humans with their own stories, families, and lives. They became things, tools to enforce the laws that dictated your world. You were trained to block out their screams, their tears. You were taught to focus only on the outcome, on the confession that would bring justice to the community. But deep down, did you ever stop and wonder what that justice actually was? Or did you push the thought aside, focusing only on the task at hand? What really drove this? What made a person take on such a grim role? Historians have long debated the psychological aspects of the job. Was the torturer simply a product of the system they were a part of? Or did they have a personal desire to inflict pain? Some argue that the lack of empathy was cultivated over time, turning a human being into a mechanical force, driven only by duty. Others suggest that those who took on this role may have done so for a variety of reasons, perhaps a twisted sense of power, perhaps financial need, or perhaps because they simply didn't know what else to do. There was no real escape, no other trade to turn to, especially if your family had already sealed your fate. At the heart of it all, you became the embodiment of law and order, yet this very system pushed you further and further into isolation. Even as you became more skilled at your craft, even as you rose through the ranks, you realized that your relationship with the world outside was deteriorating. You were slowly being pulled away from the rest of society. You might have tried to hold on to some semblance of normalcy. Perhaps you had friends before becoming a torturer, but with time, those friendships faded. Who would want to be close to someone who spent their days in the darkest chambers of the town? The townspeople avoided you, seeing you only as the one who made others suffer. They feared you, and you became the monster they whispered about in the shadows. The connection to humanity was slipping, and soon you were nothing more than the personification of fear itself. You've been in the job for a while now, and the initial shock has started to wear off. At first, the weight of your work felt heavy. Too heavy. The faces of your victims haunted you, their pleas and screams echoing in your mind. But with each passing day, the burden lightened just a little. You learned to compartmentalize your emotions, to push them down as you focused on your duties. After all, the job needed to be done, and there was no one else to do it. The first time you had to actually use the tools you had been taught to maintain, you probably hesitated. You might have stood there, gripping the handle of the whip, unsure of what to do. Your heart raced, the blood rushing in your ears, your palms sweating. But the order was clear, and the victim was waiting. You had no choice but to follow through. Historians still debate whether torturers ever truly feared their own work. Did they feel the weight of the pain they inflicted, or did the long hours of repetition dull their sense of empathy? In your case, it seemed that the latter was true. Over time, you began to see the acts of torture as routine, almost mundane. The cries became background noise, the cries of suffering fading into a rhythm you could work to. You learned the mechanics of pain, the exact pressure to apply with a whip, the precise moment to pull a person's arm, just enough to dislocate the shoulder but not tear the ligaments. As strange as it sounds, you became skilled at this work. The job didn't just require brute force, it required precision, control. The rack, that terrifying device, was not just about stretching a body, it was about knowing when to stop, when to let the victim dangle in agony before giving them the mercy of rest. Or was it mercy? The Iron Maiden, that infamous symbol of suffering, became something you handled like a craftsman with his finest tool. Each torture device was a part of you now. You had no choice. The mastery of these tools became second nature, just as learning to wield a sword would to a knight. But mastery doesn't come without its costs. Every skill you learned, every technique you perfected, came at the price of something deeper inside you. The more you trained, the more you became disconnected from the world outside. Your hands, calloused and stained, were no longer just tools of justice. They were instruments of agony. How could you return to a life of innocence when you had become the very thing society feared? How could you reconcile the person you were becoming with the child who once played in the fields? Despite the growing numbness, there was still a flicker of doubt, still the nagging feeling that something was wrong. But in the world you inhabited, doubt wasn't welcome. Doubt could cost you your position, your security, and in some cases your life. So, you pushed it aside. The work continued, and as the days blurred into months, you grew further entrenched in the role of the torturer. You were no longer the person you had once been. The job had changed you, and there was no going back. Your mentor, or perhaps it was your father if you followed in his footsteps, became a cold shadow at your side. They showed you how to set up the devices, how to calculate the right amount of pressure to break bones without killing. You learned the delicate art of inflicting pain without drawing blood, how to make the experience last. In some twisted sense, the relationship between you and your mentor grew stronger. They were the only person who truly understood what you were going through, but even that connection was fragile. It wasn't a relationship built on mutual respect or affection. It was built on the need for survival in a world that was anything but kind. As time went on, you became known for your skills. Word spread that you could get confessions like no one else, and that made you valuable. But it also made you a target. There were always those who would resent you for the work you did. The townspeople didn't care about the law or the justice behind your actions. They didn't see the bigger picture. All they saw was the person who made others suffer. You became a pariah, an outcast. Your life became a constant balancing act between duty and isolation. Historians still debate whether torturers were ever able to find peace with their actions. Were they simply pawns in a larger political game, forced to do the bidding of those in power? Or did they embrace their role, seeing themselves as a necessary evil in the grand scheme of things? Maybe, in some dark corner of your mind, you convinced yourself that the pain you inflicted was justified by the law, by the people in power. You were just the instrument, not the cause. But deep down, you knew that something wasn't right. The human side of you, the part that once dreamed of a life of peace and innocence, cried out for freedom. You wanted to be something more than just the person who stood over the rack, the whip in hand. But how could you escape? There was no escape in this world. You were trapped by your role, by the fear and hatred that followed you everywhere. The work was endless, the screams never stopped, and your own soul felt like it was slipping away. You tried to find solace in the rituals of your trade, oiling the tools, maintaining the chamber, perfecting your technique. But there was no peace to be found. You had become a machine, just another cog in the great, cruel wheel of medieval justice. The The job consumed you, bit by bit, until all that was left was a hollow shell, a person who could no longer recognize the person they once were. The days of being just an apprentice were long gone. Now, you stood at the helm of the torture chamber, the master of the tools of suffering. Every time you walked into the room, it felt like an unspoken agreement between you and the world. You were the one who enforced the law, and the law was brutal. The tools weren't just devices anymore, they had become your extension, your hands and feet in a world that had long since lost its humanity. Yet, even as you grew in skill and confidence, there was always something unsettling about the work you did. The instruments you used were an artist's palette of suffering. The Iron Maiden, often the most famous, stood at the forefront. It was said to be a symbol of ultimate agony, a design so gruesome that just hearing about it was enough to send shivers down the spine of even the most hardened individuals. The victim was placed inside the contraption, their body surrounded by spikes, but the secret was that it wasn't meant to kill immediately, no. The spikes were strategically placed to cause the victim immense pain without necessarily puncturing vital organs. The goal was always control. You were there to push them to the brink of death, then pull them back, letting them live in agony until they had confessed what they needed to confess. Historians still debate the true origins of the Iron Maiden. Was it used as often as it was believed, or was it more of a myth than a reality? Some argue that it may not have even been used at all during the medieval period, but rather was a product of later invention, a symbol used to evoke fear. Whether real or exaggerated, it became a quintessential part of the torturer's toolkit, and mastering it meant that you had reached the pinnacle of your profession. For you, the process became almost mechanical. You knew exactly where to position the spikes, how to adjust the victim's body, how to make sure they were in just enough pain to be effective. The pain itself, though horrific, became secondary to the role you played in controlling the situation. Then there was the rack. The rack, perhaps the most infamous torture device of all, was deceptively simple in design. A set of ropes and pulleys, a wooden frame, and the ability to stretch a body beyond its limits. The first time you set up the rack, it felt foreign in your hands, but soon you learned to twist the ropes, applying just enough pressure to stretch the body without causing instant death. The victim would be stretched, slowly, painfully, until they either confessed or passed out from the pain. The art of using the rack was in knowing when to stop and when to push just a little further, ensuring the maximum amount of suffering without going too far. The more you used these devices, the more you understood them. You became an expert at pain. You could read a person's body language, decipher their screams, and adjust your techniques accordingly. You knew when they were nearing their breaking point and when you could stretch them just a little more, extracting every last ounce of confession from them. It was a skill, a dark art that set you apart from others who might have been capable of inflicting pain, but not with such precision. It was almost like a dance, with every twist, pull, and adjustment timed perfectly to elicit the maximum response. And yet, there were moments when doubt crept in. Even as you grew in skill and reputation, there were still flashes of the person you used to be. You'd hear a scream, a cry for mercy, a plea that reminded you of something human, and for a fleeting second, the numbness you had cultivated over time would crack. Maybe you wondered if the victim truly deserved this. But those thoughts were fleeting. You couldn't afford to entertain them. The work had to go on. The townspeople needed you to break the criminals, to get them to confess. The law needed you to enforce justice. Without you, there would be chaos, or so you had been told. It was a never-ending cycle, one that you could not escape, no matter how much you wanted to. Historians still argue whether the emotional toll on torturers was ever truly acknowledged during the medieval period. Were torturers simply seen as necessary evils, tools of a brutal but necessary system, or were they regarded as cruel monsters who derived pleasure from their actions? Perhaps, like you, many torturers experienced the work as a form of survival, a way to carve out a place in a world where mercy had no place. You weren't the cause of the system, you were just the enforcer. But deep down there was a growing awareness that the system was broken, that it wasn't just the victims who suffered, it was you too. As the days passed, you grew more isolated, the room became your world, and the people who came in and out of it were mere shadows. You could no longer remember what it felt like to laugh, to experience the simple joys of life. You lived for the moments when the job was done, and you could escape into silence. But even then, the silence was deafening. The images of the people you tortured, their faces twisted in pain, never left you. They followed you, no matter how far you walked or how many miles you put between yourself and the chamber. The tools were your constant companions, your only friends. In their cold, metallic embrace, you had found purpose. But it was an empty purpose, one that left no room for warmth or compassion. You had become part of the machinery of a justice system that didn't care about the cost of the pain it inflicted. And with every day, you lost more of yourself. The innocent child who had once chased frogs by the river was gone, replaced by someone unrecognizable, someone who could no longer remember what it felt like to be whole. There are days when the weight of it all becomes unbearable. You've been living this life for so long now that the line between what you do and who you are has blurred. You wake up, and before you even get out of bed, you know that the day will be another one like all the others. The clang of chains, the hum of tension in the air as the chamber prepares for another confession, or for someone to break. You've seen the same faces for years. Criminals, accused traitors, heretics. Each person who enters the room carries with them a story, a tale of betrayal, crime, or defiance. But the faces of those you torture have begun to lose their significance. They are no longer people. They are merely obstacles to be broken. The first time you truly notice the physical toll this job has taken on you is during one of your rare moments of rest. Perhaps it's a quiet evening, and you sit down, finally allowing your body to relax for the first time in what feels like forever. Your hands, once steady and firm, are now scarred from years of handling the cold metal instruments. The muscles in your back ache constantly from the posture you've held while working the rack, and your shoulders too carry the weight of the years. But the worst pain isn't physical. No, the most painful thing is the dull ache in your chest, the hollow feeling that grows as you realize that you are no longer the person you were before you took on this role. You can't escape the isolation. You've tried to seek solace in the fleeting moments of rest, in the rare times when you're not working in the chamber. But wherever you go, the images follow. The victims, their faces twisted in agony, their screams echoing in your ears. No matter how far you walk or how many hours you sleep, they are there, haunting you. They are not ghosts. They are not just memories. They are real, tangible burdens that you carry with you every single day. Every time you close your eyes, you see them. The weight of your actions is impossible to ignore. Historians still debate whether the psychological toll of being a torturer was ever truly understood by those who employed them. Did those in power even care about the toll this job took on its practitioners, or were they simply viewed as necessary tools to carry out the dirty work of maintaining order? You can't help but wonder if your own torment was ever considered by the authorities. They paid you to do a job, and that job was to break people. But who broke you? Who cared for the broken man who became an instrument of suffering? As you stand over the rack, adjusting the ropes to prepare for another session, the thought hits you again. What is the cost of all this? The pain, the screams, the broken bodies, all of it feeds into a cycle of justice that no one ever questions. You've been told time and again that you are essential, that this work, though brutal, is necessary to maintain order. But is it? Is it really worth all the lives that you've broken, all the souls you've torn apart? The job has warped you. You've lost count of the faces that have passed through your hands, the bodies you've stretched, the confessions you've extracted. But the toll it has taken on you is immeasurable. In a world where compassion is in short supply, you've become nothing more than a tool, a machine that functions by inflicting pain and extracting compliance. But what happens to the person behind the tool, the person who, just a few short years ago, was innocent, carefree, and untouched by the horrors of this world? You were beginning to question your role. Was this really justice? The people you tortured were often not the worst of the lot. Some were innocent, some were scapegoats, and some were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. How could you be so sure they deserved the pain you inflicted on them? You've seen the fear in their eyes, the pleading in their voices, and you've even felt a twinge of sympathy, but you could not afford to let those feelings show. You could not afford to be weak. You had a job to do. Historians still argue whether any torturer, even those who performed their duties without hesitation, ever doubted the righteousness of their actions. Could there have been any true justice in what you did? Or was it simply an endless cycle of violence that served to perpetuate itself? The law may have told you what to do, but who told you how to live with it? The authorities, the judges, the people, they all expected you to be the one who made the criminals suffer, but who would stand by you when you were the one who had to live with that suffering? The doubts continue to swirl in your mind as you prepare for yet another day. The weight of your actions presses on your chest, but you cannot stop. There is no escape. The cries of your victims, their faces of terror, are all you know now. You've become the torturer, the instrument of pain and punishment, and there is no place for anything else. The job is who you are. And yet, in the depths of your soul, you wonder, what will be left of you when it's all over? When your time as a torturer comes to an end, what will remain of the person who used to be whole? But that is a question you cannot answer yet. For now, you take your place by the rack, your hands steady and sure as you prepare for the next victim to enter the chamber. You are the torturer, and you will continue to do your job. But as you look at the tools, at the faces of those who come and go, you cannot help but wonder how much longer you can keep going, how much longer you can keep living this life before it breaks you completely. There are moments when the weight of it all threatens to crush you, the screams, the pleading, the stench of sweat and blood. It all becomes a constant, unrelenting presence in your life. The days blur together in an endless cycle of torture and confession, but there is no joy in the work anymore, no satisfaction in the confessions you extract. It's all become numb, mechanical. You know what you are supposed to do, how to do it, and when. The questions you once had about right and wrong have long since been buried beneath layers of pain and fatigue. But those moments of doubt, however fleeting, still creep in. You try to push them down, to lock them away, but sometimes they emerge unbidden. It's hard to ignore the faces of those you've tortured. Sometimes, when you close your eyes, you see their faces as they begged for mercy, the tears in their eyes, their bodies contorted in pain. You hear their voices in your mind, even after they leave the chamber. Their cries seem to haunt every moment of your waking life. And then there's the question that never leaves you. Is this really what they deserve? Are you the one who should be carrying out this justice? Who decided that you were the one to break these people? Historians still debate whether medieval torturers were ever able to reconcile their actions with their sense of morality. Were they victims of circumstance, caught in a system they had no control over, or were they complicit in the brutality of the law? Were they simply doing a job, or were they actively perpetuating a cycle of violence and suffering? For you, the answer isn't clear. All you know is that you're here now and there's no escape from the path you've walked. But even as the pain becomes more familiar, you begin to feel a growing distance between yourself and the world outside the chamber. The isolation deepens. You have no friends, no companions. You are a pariah, an outcast. No one can understand what you do, what you've become. You can't even remember the last time you truly felt connected to another person. In a world that demands cruelty, you have lost your ability to empathize. The victim's cries no longer affect you in the way they once did. You've become desensitized to it all, hardened by years of carrying out the same brutal actions day after day. But that doesn't make it any easier. There are times when you question the very nature of the work you do. Is it just? Is it necessary? The more you torture, the more you wonder if anyone truly deserves such pain. The authorities, the judges, the people, they all seem so sure of their righteousness, so certain that the justice you're delivering is the right thing. But how do you know? How do you know that these people truly deserve what you're doing to them? How do you know they are guilty of what they are accused of? The whispers of doubt become harder to ignore, and for the first time you start to question whether this work is really about justice at all. The system is a brutal one, and it demands brutal people to carry it out. The torture chamber is no place for compassion, no place for doubt. You are not there to question the law, you are there to enforce it, to break those who break the rules. And yet, in the quiet moments, you can't help but wonder if you have become the very thing you once despised, a tool of violence and fear, a puppet in a system that does not care about the toll it takes on those who carry it out. But these thoughts are fleeting, the work continues. There are always more criminals to break, more confessions to extract. You cannot afford to stop now. You cannot afford to be weak. You have a job to do, and as long as the system demands your services, you will continue, even though it's slowly killing you from the inside. You have no choice but to carry on. Historians still argue whether the torture system of medieval times was more about extracting confessions or simply a means of instilling fear. Was it justice, or was it just a way to maintain control, to keep the people in line? Did the torturers themselves believe in the system they were a part of, or did they simply follow orders? For you, the line between justice and cruelty has long since blurred. There is no clear answer. All you know is that you are a part of the machinery of control and there is no escape. The toll of your actions is evident in every part of your being. The physical pain, the mental anguish, the isolation, these are your constant companions now. But perhaps the hardest part is the emotional toll. The person you once were is gone. You've traded your soul for survival in a world that has no place for kindness or mercy. The people you once knew are distant memories. Your life has become defined by the work you do and nothing else. The victims come and go, each one leaving behind a piece of their soul, a piece of your soul. You try not to think about it, try to push the thoughts away, but they remain, haunting you every moment you're awake. It's not just the pain you inflict on others, it's the pain you've come to carry within yourself. The torment of being the one who causes the suffering, the torment of living a life with no redemption, no escape. And so you carry on, each day blending into the next, each victim adding another layer to the burden you carry. You have no choice but to keep going. The job demands it, the system demands it. And in the end, maybe that's all that matters. Over time, something strange starts to happen. The once distinct lines of right and wrong begin to blur further. The people who enter the chamber, the ones you are supposed to break, become nothing more than faceless figures. They have no past, no future. They are simply the next ones in line to undergo your ministrations, each one marked by their crime, by their supposed guilt. But somewhere, in the deepest recesses of your mind, something shifts. The line between the torturer and the victim starts to feel less clear. At first, you try to push it away. The feeling that you might be wrong, that you could be perpetuating injustice, that maybe, just maybe, the people you are torturing are not always guilty of the things they are accused of. But you push it down, deep into the recesses of your mind, telling yourself that it is not your place to question the law. You are just the instrument. The law is the one that makes the decisions, and your job is merely to enforce them. But that nagging feeling won't go away. With each passing day, it grows stronger. You start to see the faces of your victims differently. They are no longer just criminals or sinners. They are human beings, each with their own story, their own life. They have families, hopes and dreams, just like you did when you were younger. Some of them might even be innocent. The thought gnaws at you. How many people have you broken, crushed, simply because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time? How many innocent lives have you destroyed in the name of justice? Historians still debate whether medieval torturers ever truly grappled with the morality of their work. Were they simply desensitized by their role, or did they, like you, begin to question the righteousness of their actions? It is said that some torturers, as they grew older, began to regret the work they had done, even as they continued to carry out their duties. Others embraced the cruelty, finding solace in the power it gave them over life and death. But you are no longer certain of the path you've chosen. You feel as though you are losing yourself, as though the person you were before this job has been buried so deep inside you that you can no longer reach them. You start to reflect on the choices that led you here. How did you get here, to this place, where you are no longer able to distinguish between justice and cruelty? It feels as though the line between them has been so thoroughly blurred that it is impossible to see where one ends and the other begins. The power you wield in the chamber is intoxicating, but the cost of that power is the erosion of your very humanity. As time passes, you become more and more isolated. The few relationships you once had, if they ever existed, disappear. You are alone with the tools, alone with the victims, and alone with your thoughts. The walls of the chamber close in on you, and there is nowhere to turn. You are both the executioner and the prisoner, trapped by your own actions. The world outside seems distant and unreachable, like a dream that fades the moment you wake up. But despite the isolation, despite the growing doubts, you continue your work. You have no choice. The law is the law, and you are simply its enforcer. The cries of the victims, the sounds of their suffering become the rhythm of your life. You begin to wonder if the people who created this system, the ones who put you in this position, ever considered the toll it would take on those who carried out the dirty work. But then again, you are not supposed to think about that. You are not supposed to question it. You are simply the tool, and the tool has no right to question the hand that wields it. Historians still argue whether the medieval torturer ever found peace, either in their work or in their soul. Some believe that the torturer was forever tormented by the cruelty they had to enforce, while others think they simply became numb to it all, seeing their actions as necessary for the greater good. Perhaps you, too, have become numb. Perhaps you've reached a point where the pain no longer matters, where the cries no longer affect you. Perhaps you've convinced yourself that what you do is right, that the justice you bring is worth the cost. But in the deepest corners of your mind, the doubts remain. You cannot escape them. You cannot ignore the feeling that you are not the hero in this story, but the villain. You are the one who breaks, who destroys. The justice you claim to serve is a hollow thing, and the people you break are not criminals, not sinners. They are simply human beings, just like you. And yet, you continue. You continue because there is nothing else for you. The path you have chosen has no exit, no escape. And so you carry on, each day a repetition of the last. You set the tools, you prepare the chamber, and you wait for the next victim to arrive. You don't think about what happens after the torture, after the confessions are extracted, after the work is done. You cannot afford to think about it. There is only the job, only the moment. You are the torturer, and that is all you will ever be. The days start to slip away, blending together into an indistinct fog. Each day you wake, and each day you step back into the chamber, prepared for another round of brutality. The faces change, the victims vary in age and manner, but the routine remains the same. You follow the steps, you do your job, and then you leave, only to return again. There is no escape from this cycle, and so it becomes your life. The world outside, the world of normal people, becomes more distant with each passing moment. You can no longer remember what it felt like to live in a world where you weren't the one administering pain. The torment you inflict on others begins to reflect the torment you carry within yourself. But something inside you starts to shift. Over time, you begin to feel a growing disconnect from your own humanity. The isolation that you have felt for so long becomes less a physical distance and more a psychological state. You are no longer a person, you are simply a tool, the tools of your trade. The racks, the chains, the whips, and the nails are no longer objects of horror. They are just extensions of yourself. You are defined by the tools you wield. You no longer question their purpose, their effect, or their meaning. You simply use them, again and again, day in and day out. But beneath this external calm, beneath the faceless, mechanical role you play, there is a slow, creeping unraveling within. The numbness, the sense of detachment that you once relied on, starts to give way to something else. You start to question everything, your role, your identity, your purpose. The victims no longer fade into the background of your mind, they linger. Their faces remain etched in your memory, their voices still reverberating in the corners of your brain. Historians still argue whether the mind of the torturer could truly remain untouched by their work. Some suggest that, over time, the mind of the torturer would become so calloused, so numbed to suffering, that nothing would stir their conscience. But you feel differently now. The numbness is beginning to crack, and it is a painful process. You can no longer simply compartmentalize the victims. They are no longer faceless criminals who deserve what's coming to them. They are people, fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, and the realization shakes you to your core. but you are trapped. There is no escape from the role you have been cast in. You cannot just walk away from this life. The system is built on people like you. You are the embodiment of the law's will, a cog in a vast machine that doesn't care about the individuals it grinds beneath its gears. You are not allowed to question it, to think about it. You are expected to be a tool, not a person. You are not allowed the luxury of doubt. And yet, doubt begins to creep in, no matter how much you try to push it away. It manifests itself in the smallest things. A victim who looks at you, truly looks at you with fear and vulnerability in their eyes. A faint cry that isn't just a plea for mercy, but a sound that resonates deep within you. These are the moments that haunt you long after the job is done. They become your undoing, slowly unraveling the armor you've built around yourself. It is in these moments that you realize just how far you've fallen from the person you once were. The man who would have stood up against injustice is now the one who carries it out. The person who once felt empathy for the suffering of others is now the one who inflicts that suffering. You can't help but wonder how it all happened. How did you go from a child, innocent and full of life, to this, to a torturer, to someone who breaks others for a living? Historians still debate the moral implications of the torturer's role. Were they simply tools of the state, forced into a system that gave them no choice, or were they active participants in a cruel and inhumane process? For you, the answer is not clear, but as the days drag on, you feel the weight of your actions more and more. The guilt gnaws at you, a constant companion, never leaving, never fading. The toll of the job isn't just physical. The scars on your hands, the aching in your back, those are just the outward signs. The true cost is buried much deeper. It's in the way you look at the world now, how you see everyone through a veil of suspicion. You can no longer look at anyone without wondering what they might be hiding, what they might be guilty of. It's in the way you no longer trust yourself, your own judgment. You've spent so long breaking others that you've forgotten what it means to build something up. You've lost your sense of self. The isolation deepens. No one can understand what you're going through. Who would want to? You are a torturer after all. You are the one who inflicts the pain. The world views you with fear and contempt, and you can't blame them. You've become exactly what they fear, exactly what they despise. You have no place among them. Historians still debate whether torturers ever found redemption, or if they simply continued on in their roles until the very end. Was there any possibility of salvation for someone like you, or had you become so entrenched in the brutality of your job that there was no turning back? You don't know. You don't know if there is any redemption for you. But you feel it, deep inside, like a cold, heavy weight, the realization that you are lost. You have become the thing you feared. You have become a monster, and no matter how much you try to deny it, you know it's true. There's no escape from that truth. The work you've done, the lives you've destroyed, are irreversible. You cannot undo the harm you've caused. You cannot go back to the person you once were. And yet you continue. The job continues. The next victim will arrive, and you will do it all over again. There is no stopping now. You are the torturer, and that is all you will ever be. The work, it seems, never ends. No matter how much you may wish for a moment of peace, for a day without the heavy weight of your duty pressing down on you, there is always someone new, another person accused of a crime, another soul who needs breaking. You stand at the ready, knowing that the job will continue whether you want it to or not. It's a vicious cycle, one that doesn't care about your doubts, your fears, or your guilt. The law needs you, the system needs you, and you, despite everything, need the system. It's strange, isn't it, the way you've come to rely on this role, despite the toll it takes on you. Over time, you've become so inextricably tied to the job that you can no longer remember what life was like before it. It feels like the only thing you know now. The only thing that defines you. You are a torturer. That is your identity. Your role in society is clear. It doesn't matter if you feel sickened by it, if you wish you could escape. It's a role that's been thrust upon you and there's no going back. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, when you're alone with your thoughts, you ask yourself what your life could have been. What would you have become had you never walked this path? What would it have been like to live a life where you didn't have to turn away from the suffering you caused, where you could hold your head high and not be weighed down by the knowledge that you were complicit in the destruction of so many lives? The answer is elusive, always out of reach. You have become who you are because of the choices you've made, the work you've done, and there is no undoing that. But there is a part of you, a small part, that still longs for something different. You long for a life of peace, a life where you could sit down at the table with others and not feel the judgment in their eyes. You wish you could step outside, breathe the fresh air, and not feel like the walls are closing in on you. You wonder what it would be like to experience joy again, to feel something other than guilt and exhaustion. But that part of you is fading with each day that passes, and the longer you remain in this role, the more it seems impossible to remember what it would feel like to be free from it. Historians still argue whether the torturer's conscience ever truly found peace. Some believe that, over time, the mind and soul of the torturer becomes so warped by the constant violence and cruelty that they can no longer recognize the harm they have caused. Others argue that the doubt, the guilt, the despair never truly goes away. It lingers in the background, like a shadow that follows you wherever you go. The torturer might push it away, ignore it, but it's always there. You can never fully escape it. The work continues. Each victim is an opportunity for the system to enforce its power, an opportunity for you to do your duty. You do it because you have no other choice. But with each passing day, the emotional cost becomes harder to ignore. The guilt eats at you from the inside, but there is nothing you can do to stop it. It's too late. The job has become a part of you, and you have become a part of it. And yet, as you prepare for the next session, as you step into the chamber for yet another round of torment, you can't shake the feeling that you're running out of time, running out of strength. The toll is taking its final toll, and you can feel it in every bone of your body. Your body aches, but it's not just the physical pain that wears you down. It's the emotional and psychological toll that's taken its final hold. You can't ignore it anymore, it's too much. You want out. You want to walk away, to find a way to escape the cycle that has ensnared you. But there is no way out. You have made your choices, and now you must live with them. The past is gone. The life you once could have had is gone. All that remains is this endless, soul-crushing cycle of torture, of breaking people, of destroying lives. You wonder, briefly, if there will ever come a time when you are free of it. But deep down, you know the answer. This is your fate now. There is no escape. Historians still debate the ultimate fate of the torturer. Some believe that they were eventually discarded, forgotten by society once their usefulness ended. Others suggest that they lived out their lives in torment, forever haunted by the screams of the people they had tortured. But no matter the outcome, the path is the same. The life of a torturer is one of isolation, of soul-crushing despair. You wonder if, when it's all over, you will be remembered. Will anyone care that you existed? Or will you simply fade away like so many others before you? You don't know. But for now, there is only the job, and there is no escape. The days continue, each one indistinguishable from the last. Time seems to stretch out in a never-ending series of torturous sessions. You move through your routine like a sleepwalker, going through the motions without feeling anything, as though your body is functioning independently of your mind. You arrive at the chamber, set the tools, and wait. The process is automatic, like a well-rehearsed play that you've performed countless times, with no audience to appreciate the performance. The faces of your victims come and go, but they are always the same in their desperation, in their fear. Yet, over time they begin to blur into a single faceless entity. They all scream the same, beg the same, and beg for mercy that never comes. You no longer hear them, or at least, you try not to. The cries of pain used to be a sharp reminder of what you were doing, a reminder of the lives you were breaking. But now, they are a constant hum in the background, like the wind rustling through trees, something that fades into the environment, becoming part of the noise of your life. The human element of it all has faded. These people, their pain, it is just another part of the routine. You've built a wall, a thick, unyielding wall between yourself and what you are doing. You've trained yourself to detach, to ignore the screams and pleas, to focus only on the task at hand. You have become numb. But still, there are moments when that numbness cracks, when the mask you've built up starts to falter, when the face of a victim looks at you not with fear, but with something else, something you can't quite place. A recognition, perhaps. A recognition that you too are just a person, just a human, and not the monster they have been taught to fear. You can feel their eyes on you as they plead, but this time their eyes are different. They aren't just filled with terror or pain, they are filled with sorrow, and you realize with a sudden shock that their sorrow is not for themselves, it is for you. Historians still argue whether the medieval torturer was ever able to truly separate themselves from their actions. Some suggest that, over time, they grew so accustomed to the suffering that it became impossible to feel anything at all. But you know deep down that this numbness is a facade. It's a mask you've worn for so long that you no longer know where it ends and you begin. But you are starting to feel again. The coldness that you've surrounded yourself with for so many years is beginning to thaw, and with it comes the realization of the monstrosity you have become. The guilt, long buried beneath layers of indifference, begins to rise to the surface. You can no longer push it away, it demands to be acknowledged. And with each new victim you begin to understand just how far you have fallen. They are not the faceless criminals you once believed them to be. They are people, just like you. People who may have made mistakes, who may have been caught in a system that demanded their punishment. And you, the one who is supposed to uphold justice, have become the one who enforces that cruelty. Without question, without mercy. The toll of this realization is more than you can bear. It is as if the weight of every life you've destroyed is finally catching up with you, pressing down on you with unbearable force. You feel the weight in your chest, a constant suffocating pressure that will not go away. You have lost yourself in this job. The person you once were is gone. You have become the thing you despised, the thing you feared, the monster who breaks others for a living. But you can't stop. The system demands your compliance. You have no choice but to continue. The people need you. The law needs you. You are nothing without the job. The thought of stopping, of walking away, seems impossible. Where would you go? Who would you be without the role you have played for so long? You've given up so much of yourself to this work that you can no longer imagine life outside the chamber. You have become your job, and it has consumed you. As you prepare for the next session, your hands shaking slightly, you wonder if there will ever be a moment when you will be free of this life. Will there ever be a time when you can look at yourself and not be repulsed by what you have become? The question lingers in the air, unanswered, but you know the truth. There is no escape from the path you have chosen. You are the torturer. You are the enforcer of pain, and there is no turning back. Historians often debate the end of the torturer's story. Was there a moment of redemption, of salvation, or did they continue, broken and lost, until the very end? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in the silence of their final days, in the quiet moments when they are left alone with their conscience. Perhaps it is in those moments of reflection, when the weight of their actions finally becomes too much to bear, that the true cost of their work is revealed. But for you, the answer is simple. You will continue. There is no other choice. The years stretch on, and the work continues without pause. You have become a part of the system, just another cog in its massive, grinding wheel. The faces may change, the accusations may vary, but the routine remains the same. You wake, prepare the chamber, and wait. And though you've long since lost count of the people whose lives you've broken, the pattern remains, inevitable, relentless. The chamber, the tools, the cries, it all feels like part of you now, as though you are no longer merely performing a job but embodying it. You've become the torturer, not just in title but in essence. Yet, somewhere in the depths of your mind, there is a stillness. It's hard to explain, but you've begun to see yourself differently. Perhaps it's the exhaustion, the endless toll it's taken on your soul. Perhaps it's the growing realization that, in carrying out the work of the system, you've forgotten who you are, what you once were. There was a time, long ago, when you could have been something else. You could have been someone else. But that person is gone now, a mere ghost that haunts the fragments of your memories. Every time you hear a victim scream, every time you see the fear in their eyes, it's harder to ignore the truth. You are not the instrument of justice you once believed you were. You are the tool of a broken system. You are not the one who decides whether someone deserves to suffer, you're just the one who enforces it. You've lost the power to question, to reason. You've become too entrenched in the role, too deep in the job to see the bigger picture. Historians still debate whether torturers ever realized the depth of their complicity. Some argue that over time they began to feel the weight of their actions, the crushing burden of the lives they had destroyed. Others suggest that the torturer's mind could simply shut out the morality of their work, to the point where they no longer saw the victims as human, but as mere instruments for the system's justice. But you can't escape it, you can't push it away any longer. There's no denying it now. The faces of the people you've broken, the screams you've silenced, the lives you've ruined, those memories weigh on you more than any chain ever could. You've become their victim too. The burden of your actions follows you everywhere, and it has no end. It doesn't matter how many times you've performed the ritual, how many times you've set the tools in place, the cost never gets easier to bear. The toll, emotional and mental, grows with every passing day. And yet, in some dark corner of your mind, a flicker of defiance remains. Maybe it's the human part of you trying to claw its way out of the abyss you've fallen into. Maybe it's the last vestige of who you once were, before the walls closed in around you. But that flicker is fragile, easily snuffed out by the demands of the job. The system needs you. The people need you. They don't care about your soul, your conscience, or your guilt. All they care about is that you carry out your duty. It doesn't matter if you're breaking or if you've broken, you are a tool, and tools do not question their purpose. The weight of that truth sinks in deeper every day. You are not the one in control. The system is, the law is. You've been reduced to a puppet pulled along by forces beyond your comprehension, beyond your control. The work you do, the pain you inflict, has become your entire existence. It is your world now, and there is no escaping it. You cannot walk away from this. You cannot leave this life behind. The job has consumed you, and you know deep down that it always will. And yet, every time you set the chamber, every time you prepare for another victim, you wonder if there will ever come a time when you can step away, when you can lay down the tools and never look back. You wonder if you will ever be able to find peace. You wonder if you will ever be able to look at yourself and see a person again, not a torturer, not a machine. But you know, deep down, that this is your fate. You are trapped in this role and there is no escape. Historians still debate the fate of the medieval torturer. Some believe that they eventually faded into obscurity, forgotten by all, their names lost to time. Others think they lived out their days, haunted by the lives they destroyed, forever tormented by their actions. But for you, the question isn't about what happens to the torturer in the end. The question is about what happens to the person inside the torturer. Will you ever escape this? Will you ever find a way to live with yourself? The chamber, the tools, the victims, they are all part of you now, and as the door opens once again, as you step forward to begin the next session, you know the truth. This is who you are. This is all you will ever be. There are moments when the weight of it all becomes overwhelming. The routine of it, the monotony of the work, the endless cycle that seems to stretch on forever. The chamber feels colder than ever before. The tools feel heavier. You know the sounds, the smells, the cries, the faces, all too well. The weight of it all presses down on your chest, suffocating you, squeezing the last remnants of your soul. You try to shut it out, to block out the humanity of it, to see your work as just that, work. But it's harder now, much harder. As the years have worn on, the numbness you once relied on to carry out your duties is beginning to crack. You cannot hide from it anymore. The guilt gnaws at you, persistent and unyielding. It has become your shadow, your constant companion. Even in the stillness of the night, when you close your eyes, you see their faces, the ones you've tortured, the ones you've broken. Their eyes, wide with fear, their voices echoing in your mind. You wonder if you'll ever be free of them. Historians still argue whether the medieval torturer ever had the chance to feel redemption. Did they ever find peace with the lives they had destroyed, or were they forever trapped in their roles, unable to reconcile their actions with their own humanity? For you, the question is not whether redemption is possible, it's whether you even deserve it. You know that there is no escape from the life you have built, the path you have walked. There is no going back. You are here, in this chamber, with these tools, and the people who come to you are at your mercy. You are bound to the system, to the job, and no matter how much you want to escape it, there is no way out. The job itself has changed you. You can no longer remember what it felt like to be a person outside of this role, to be someone who could laugh, could love, could feel joy. Now there is only the chamber, only the work. You have lost yourself in it. It has consumed you, and with each victim that enters, each face that looks at you with fear and desperation, you feel the final remnants of who you were slipping further away. You wonder if, at some point, you stopped seeing them as human, the victims, the ones you were supposed to break. Maybe in the beginning you still saw them as people who could be saved or spared, but now they are just names on a list, faces in a crowd of criminals. You don't see them as individuals anymore. You can't afford to. If you did, you would crumble. And so you don't. You harden yourself as best you can, but the cracks are spread. The walls you've built around yourself are starting to crumble. You feel them, and it terrifies you. In those rare, fleeting moments of respite, when you're alone with your thoughts, you wonder what happened to the person you once were. The person who could walk into a room and smile, who could enjoy the simple things in life. That person is long gone, buried beneath the weight of the torture, the guilt, the isolation. The job has swallowed them whole. Historians still debate whether the life of a torturer can ever be redeemed. Can a person who has spent their life breaking others ever return to a place of humanity? Or is it too late? Are they forever trapped in the system they helped build, forever locked in a cycle of cruelty and suffering? You don't know. You can't know. All you know is that you are lost, and the only thing left is the work, the job, the system. And yet, as the years drag on, you begin to wonder what will happen when the job ends. When you've tortured your last victim, when there's nothing left to break, what will become of you then? Will you fade into obscurity, forgotten by the world that once relied on you to enforce its justice? Or will you live with the knowledge of the pain you caused, the lives you destroyed? Will you ever be able to escape it? The questions are endless, but the answers are never clear. For now, there is only the chamber, only the tools, only the faces of the victims, each one a reminder of what you have become. You wonder, in the quietest of moments, if you will ever feel something again, anything. But for now, there is only the endless cycle of torture, the relentless work, and the deepening realization that you are no longer the person you once were, the person you could have been. Historians still argue whether medieval torturers ever found peace, whether they ever reconciled their actions with their conscience, or whether they died in torment, haunted by the suffering they had inflicted. For you, the end is not yet here. There are still more victims to break. And when it's all over, when the chamber is empty and the tools are finally set aside, there will be nothing left but the broken pieces of your soul. The days, weeks, and years blur into one another, fading into a haze of torment and despair. You are no longer sure when it began, when you first became trapped in this endless cycle, when you stopped seeing yourself as a person and started seeing yourself only as the torturer. The line between who you once were and who you are now has become so indistinguishable that it's hard to remember the distinction. What was once a job has long since become your entire existence. The people you break, the faces that beg for mercy, the cries that echo in your mind, they are all part of you now. They are the only reality you know. You are a shadow of the person you used to be, a hollow shell, walking through each day with only the dull ache of guilt and regret as your companions. There is no escape. The job continues, and with it comes the knowledge that you have long since crossed a point of no return. You cannot go back. You cannot undo what you've done. The innocence you once had has been taken from you, piece by piece, until there is nothing left but this. It's strange, isn't it, how something so cold, so calculated, can become all-consuming. The first few sessions, they were terrifying, overwhelming. You felt the weight of each person's life, the responsibility of what you were doing. But over time, that weight became familiar. It was no longer the crushing burden it once was. It became a routine. You got better at it, more efficient, more detached. The screams didn't bother you as much anymore. The blood didn't make your stomach turn. You had become, in many ways, numb to it all. You became so skilled at your role that it didn't feel like you were even living anymore. You were just existing, going through the motions of the job day after day. But now, there's something different, a crack in the numbness. The faces that once blurred together, indistinguishable from one victim to the next, now have names. You begin to notice the smallest details, the way they beg, the fear in their eyes, the desperation in their voice. For the first time you start to feel it, the guilt, the regret, the doubt. You wonder how many of them deserved it. How many of them were truly guilty of the crimes they were accused of. You wonder how many innocent people have been broken in the name of justice. How many lives you've ruined, how many souls you've shattered, and for what? Historians still debate whether the torturer ever truly felt remorse for their actions. Some believe that, over time, the guilt would become unbearable, leading the torturer to question the very system they served. Others argue that the torturer, through sheer repetition, becomes numb to their own cruelty, detached from the humanity of the people they harm. For you, the guilt is undeniable. The weight of the lives you've broken is crushing. Every victim is a reflection of the person you've become. Each scream is a reminder that you are no longer the person you once were. The world around you feels distant now. The chamber, the tools, the screams, they are all you know. You've lost touch with the outside world, with the idea of a life beyond this. There is no place for you in that world anymore. You are a prisoner of your own making, trapped in this cycle, unable to escape. You are the torturer, and the torturer is all you will ever be. And yet, despite the growing weight of it all, despite the slow unraveling of your soul, you can't stop, you can't walk away. There is no exit from this life. The system won't let you leave. The law demands your obedience, and you must comply. You are nothing without it. You are just a tool in the hands of those who created this system, who use you to enforce their version of justice. As you prepare for yet another session, as you set the tools and wait for the next victim, you wonder for the first time in what feels like an eternity, if there is any possibility of escape. Could you leave? Could you walk away from this life and start over? The thought seems impossible, as though it belongs to someone else, someone who could never have been you. You've lost yourself in this work. The person you were, the person who might have had the chance to walk away, is gone. Historians argue whether torturers ever had the chance to escape their fate, whether they could ever break free from the roles they had accepted. Could they leave the work behind and reclaim their humanity? Could they ever stop being the instrument of suffering and become something more? For you, the answer seems clear. There is no escape, there is no redemption, there is only the work, the endless cycle that has become your life. And so you continue. The work never stops. The chamber is always waiting. The tools are always ready. The victims will come, and you will break them. There is no other choice. You cannot remember when it began, nor when it will end. Each day blends into the next, indistinguishable from the one before. The work has consumed you. The chamber, the tools, the faces of your victims, everything has become a part of you. You wake up, you prepare, and you wait. The silence of the chamber is punctuated only by the sounds of your own footsteps, the scraping of metal against stone, and the distant, muffled cries of those who come seeking your brand of justice. The victims arrive with their own stories, their own reasons for being there. They come as criminals, heretics, traitors and spies, accused of crimes that may or may not be true, but they are all the same in the end. They are all the same to you now. It wasn't always like this, was it? There was a time when you didn't see them as faceless figures, as nothing more than objects to be broken. You remember, vaguely, when you saw them as people, when their pleas for mercy touched something deep inside you. But that person, the one who cared, the one who hesitated, seems like someone from another life. That person is gone now. The torturer you've become is all that remains. The toll of it all has become unbearable, hasn't it? You feel it in your bones, the ache in your hands, your shoulders, your back, from years of wielding the tools, from years of inflicting pain, stretching bodies, pulling limbs, watching people writhe in agony under your careful, deliberate hands. But that's not what hurts the most. The physical pain is nothing compared to the soul-crushing weight of the guilt you carry inside. It gnaws at you, a constant presence, always there, no matter what you do to try and block it out. Historians still debate the psychological toll of the torturer's work. Was it inevitable that a person in your position would eventually lose themselves in the violence? Could a torturer ever live with the knowledge of what they had done without being consumed by it? Perhaps, in some cases, the toll was so great that it drove the torturer mad. In others, it might have simply worn them down, piece by piece, until they were little more than an empty shell, incapable of feeling anything at all. But for you, there is no numbness left. The weight of the suffering you have caused is like an anchor tied to your chest, dragging you down every single day. And yet you cannot stop. You've tried to push the thoughts away, haven't you? You've tried to ignore the faces, the cries, the hollow emptiness that consumes you. But they won't leave you. They follow you, haunting you in your dreams, in your waking hours. The memories of the people you've broken, some of them guilty, many of them probably innocent, are a constant reminder of what you've become. They have marked you. You can feel it in the very air around you. The air is thick with guilt, with regret, and with a despair you cannot shake. It's all you know now. Every time you walk into the chamber, you feel it. That familiar weight pressing down on your soul. The walls close in, and the tools wait patiently, ready for the next victim. The cycle continues, but something has shifted. You are no longer just the one who enforces the law. You've become a part of it. A part of the brutality, a part of the cruelty. You cannot hide from it anymore. You are a monster, just like the ones you were supposed to defeat. And that truth is more unbearable than anything you've done to those you've tortured. As the years pass, you begin to wonder if it will ever end. Will this ever be over? Will you ever escape this life, this role, this endless cycle of destruction? You think about the possibility of walking away, of finding a way to reclaim what's left of yourself, but that thought seems impossible. You have become this. This is who you are now. The job has consumed you. The world outside of the chamber is nothing but a distant memory. You have long since stopped being a person. You have become a tool, a weapon, wielded by a system that does not care about your soul, about your humanity. Historians argue whether torturers ever faced any kind of reckoning. Were they ever able to come to terms with what they had done, or were they doomed to live out the rest of their lives in denial, trapped by the roles they played? Could any of them ever go back to being human again? Could any of them find peace? For you, the answer is simple. There is no peace. There is no redemption. There is only the work. The endless, unrelenting work, the chamber, the tools, the victims. You've heard the stories, haven't you? The ones about the torturers who became monsters, who were consumed by their own cruelty, driven mad by the pain they inflicted. The ones who could no longer differentiate between justice and cruelty, between right and wrong. You've heard those stories, and somewhere deep inside you know you are becoming one of them. You are becoming the very thing you used to fear, the very thing you used to hate, the very thing you swore you would never become. But there's nothing you can do. You cannot stop. The system needs you, the law needs you, the people need you. The endless cycle continues. You break them, you twist them, you extract their confessions, and they leave empty shells broken by your hands. And yet they are not the only ones who leave broken. You leave with them. Each time you break someone, you break a piece of yourself. The pieces are small at first, barely noticeable, but over time they add up. The cracks widen. The pieces of who you once were crumble away. Historians still argue whether the torturer ever had the chance to escape the monster they had become. Perhaps, in the end, there was no escape for them. Perhaps, like you, they realized too late that the work had consumed them, that they were no longer the people they had once been. You wonder if there will ever come a day when you can put down the tools and walk away from it all. but deep down, you know that day will never come. The work has become your life and there is no escaping it. So, you continue. The work never stops. The victims come and go, the tools wait, patient and unfeeling, and you, well, you've become just another part of the system, another cog in the wheel of cruelty. There is no more you left. There is only the torturer. And the torturer is all you will ever be. As the work ends and the chamber falls silent, the weight of it all lingers in the air, heavy and thick. You've broken so much, so many lives, so much of yourself. It all feels like a distant echo now, fading into the shadows of the room. The tools are put away, the chamber empties, and for a moment you are left alone with your thoughts. You think about all the faces, all the people you've tortured, the lives you've torn apart, the souls you've crushed under the weight of justice, but no matter how much you think about it, the cost is too great to comprehend. You close your eyes and take a deep breath. There is nothing left now but the silence, the quiet hum of the world beyond the chamber. The cries have faded, the faces have blurred, but the feeling remains, the pain, the guilt, the haunting awareness of what you have done and what you have become. But now the work is done. For tonight at least, the toll has been paid, and the chamber is empty. No more victims, no more screams, just the quiet. It's a small comfort, but it's enough. You sit with that silence for a moment, letting it wash over you. It is not peace, but it is a moment of rest, a moment of reprieve from the endless cycle. The questions remain, of course, the doubt, the regret. They will always be there, hovering in the background, reminding you of the cost. But in this quiet, in this small moment of solitude, there is just you, just the empty room, and for a brief, fleeting instant, you let go, you let the weight lift, just enough to breathe, to exist in the stillness. And then the world moves on, the work will begin again, the cycle will continue, and you, the torturer, will carry on, but for now, in this final, quiet breath, you allow yourself to rest, because that is all you can do. And sometimes, even the smallest moments of peace are enough.